How does a bishop start to question?
I was reading a Tribune article about a new essay on race in the priesthood that the church had released. And
So 2013, 2014, something like that?
Yep, I think end of 2013, maybe December or so. And I went to the church's website, navigated my way, and found the essay and read it. And there's a part in there that just really hit me. In the essay, they disavow that dark skin is a sign of divine disfavor or a curse, and I agree that is the case. Except, I remember as a missionary sitting in my chair doing my personal study, reading the Book of Mormon, and in 2 Nephi, I think it's chapter 5, when the Nephites and Lamanites split off into two groups, and the Lord curses the Lamanites with dark skin, and it's very clear that that's what he does. And it says, I think it's Nephi speaking in first person for the Lord, and he says, cursed with the skin of blackness, and so that they would be not appealing to the Nephites. And I remember reading that as a missionary in New Zealand with lots of Polynesian people, where I'm serving, and thinking, that's horrible. But it was from God. Like I completely accepted that this was from God, and my feeling wasn't that it was horrible that God did this. My feeling was, how would it feel to be a person of color and read this? And I was terrified that someone may ask me about this in New Zealand, but it never came up. And I just remember feeling that way. And when I read that essay and I read that paragraph, that memory came back to me immediately. And I thought, well, these two things contradict each other. Here's the church saying, we disavow that dark skin is a sign of a curse. And here is either Jesus or Nephi or Mormon or Joseph Smith. Those are the only four people that could have written that verse. And they're saying in first person, it's a curse. And it just shook something loose in me. Because I trusted my church leaders and prophets. I just had faith in prophets that if you follow the teachings of the prophets, your life will work out well. And all of a sudden, it just shook my confidence in the scriptures a little bit. Like, it never had occurred to me that prophets can be wrong, and not just like a little wrong, but in ways that can affect people's lives. And for a little while, that it just shook me. It just bothered me. And then I found the other essays that they had released about. I can't remember at this time which ones came out when. There's about 13 or 14 of them. And I think over the next 8 months, they released them kind of gradually. And I read all of them as they came out. And some of them bothered me a lot. I read I tried to be as fair as I could. I read the footnotes. I read everything I could read about the essays to try and make sense of what's going on, about what does it mean if a prophet, if someone in this ancient scripture that I have, that I believe is from God, gives me bad advice. What does that mean? How can I know which ones are what's good and what's not? And because I never felt like I was a super spiritual person, I had to rely on these prophets or leaders, because I didn't feel like I never received revelation or answers in a direct enough way to know this is how something should be, or something like that. So that caused me some problems. But again, I went back to my tried and true. Well, that's an issue. I got to sort that out. And I think about things a lot. I don't do anything fast. I think about things. I like to hear both sides of arguments. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So that bothered me, and I just kind of left it there. And then, I'm so busy as a bishop. I got stuff to do, and I just kind of went back to my calling and tried to do bishop stuff.
Did you find out about the essays from the church? Sort of like, hey, bishops, these essays are coming out. Here's where you find them. Here's what they're for. Here's why you need to learn about them?
Nope.
So you're serving as bishop when the essays come out.
Yes.
And you know nothing about them.
Zero.
How do you explain that?
I think it's shocking.
That you're learning from the trib.
Yeah.
About these resources that are supposed to be helping.
And I
members.
assume that, and I, looking back a little bit of hindsight now, kudos to the church for putting out this essay and saying, hey, this is maybe a problem area in our past and something, and we want to make it a little better. But I don't know why it was just on a page, and it wasn't on the front page of the website. It was. I think there was a link in the article that got me to it, or because it wasn't church rolls out essays or anything like that. It was the
wasn't in the ensign.
No, the bishops didn't know. I don't have a good explanation. I don't know why they didn't roll that out, and maybe it's because it was shocking to people. Because it was shocking to me.
Well, we know that because Elder Snow and others have admitted it, that the church wanted to put these out sort of so that they couldn't be accused of lying or withholding information from the members, but that they intentionally did not want them broadly read or known about because it could cause people to doubt or question.
Right.
So they wanted them to be there only as a last resort emergency or only as evidence of against them being accused of hiding or deceiving people.
Yeah.
But my guess is they didn't want you reading them.
Right.
And it sounds like there was good reason for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And this kind of, there were a couple of series of events that kind of eroded my belief in prophets. So the essays happened, and I can't remember if this was before or after the stake president that had called me had served 10 years and time to get released. And so I get a letter, and the letter has on it questions about me, my occupation, my previous church callings, and then it has a spot for me to fill out the names of 3 people who I think would be good stake presidents, and come to the meeting with this, and that kind of bothered me because I'm a practical guy. I get it that these guys are coming here, and they don't know me, they don't know anybody in the stake, and they're tasked with choosing a stake president that's going to run the stake for 10 years, and it's a big deal. But I was a little disappointed. Like, what about revelation? Like, if our callings come from God, shouldn't he tell you who it would be? At some point I figured higher up in the church there would be someone who's getting revelation in a different way than I do, or a different way than normal people, where you just pray about something and feel okay about it, and that's revelation, right? But I hoped that there was somewhere there who was actually getting, I don't know how it's supposed to work, but where they would clearly know this gentleman is supposed to be the stake president, right? I just started to worry. What if everyone is like me? What if these men, like the previous bishop, was doing the best he could and just decided something, and we supported it and we thought it was revelation, but he just was doing the best he could? And what if these guys are doing the same thing? And what if it's like that all the way up? And that thought just kind of stuck in my brain.
Which of the other essays impacted you besides the race and the priesthood?
The Book of Abraham essay.
What about it?
The fact that the scrolls that Joseph translated to become the Book of Abraham didn't have anything to do with Abraham. They were just normal funerary texts, that had been translated after. So Joseph translated the Book of Abraham before the Rosetta Stone had been discovered, and people knew how to read Egyptian. And then later, we learned how to read Egyptian and found those scrolls, and they did not contain anything to do with the Book of Abraham. And the essay gives suggestions on other ways to look at it, right? That Joseph thought they were, or it doesn't matter that they didn't match. He's still receiving revelation and gave us this wonderful Book of Abraham that has all these great truths in it. And so it doesn't really matter, but it did matter to me, because it was another spot where maybe this revelation from God isn't as straightforward as I thought it was. Maybe it's not clear. And so how much of this is being influenced by Joseph the man rather than by God, or by, it just was another weight of my revelation may not be what I think it is bucket.
And so what you're saying is you were starting to question the inspiration process.
Yes. Yep.
As you understood it.
Yes. Yes. And
I wonder if it was just ordinary people just making it up.
Yes.
Versus really being led by God.
Yes. And that, in conjunction with that essay and then reading the other essays, just made it worse. If Nephi could be wrong about something, and if reading the other essays, there are issues with Joseph Smith, with the Book of Abraham and polygamy and all sorts of things. And I thought, if he's wrong about things too, how are we supposed to know when they're right and when they're wrong? And is it not a reliable process? Is it not a straightforward way? And maybe I viewed Revelation too simply when I was younger, and maybe I'm naive about how it works. But from all those stories I read and all the scriptures, it's pretty straightforward. God talks to the prophet, and he tells us what God wants. And that was shaken for me severely. In hindsight now, it turns out they weren't right. The church now disavows those theories and doctrines. And so if they weren't right, how can we trust them? That's my issue, is how can I know that if the prophet is telling me something that I don't think is right, and I'm not getting direct communication from God, what are my options? My options are to look into the scriptures on my own, read everything I can, and decide for myself. And if I don't trust that the prophet is telling me something, if I can't trust it that they're right, I got to just go off what I think, and that's it. And so that's what I do now. So that issue for me just kept kind of eating at me, that I lost confidence in my leaders, that they really knew the will of God, and that's it.